Hello! Welcome to our fourth panel on this Saturday gaming day. I'm so excited for this panel. I think it's our first TTRPG panel of the con. So I'm excited about that. Overcoming anxiety in TTRPGs is going to be the title of the panel. Before we get started, though, I definitely wanted to talk about our charity that we're going to be donating to. Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation is where all the money that you're donating is going to. You can donate at givebutter.com/UtahRemoteCon2. We've raised about $700 so far, which we're really stoked about. We have a couple people in our podcast network who not only might have it or have loved ones who have type 1 diabetes. So we're really excited to be able to support such a good foundation. We have a raffle prize that we'll be raffling off at the end of this panel, and it is super awesome. It's a set of Arium books, which is a TTRPG. Arium was a Kickstarter that Will Munn did, and so if you want to start, like, dip your toes into tabletop gaming and to role-play gaming, this would be a great one to try to donate to and try to win as a raffle prize. So I'm excited about that. We'll announce at the end of the panel who's the winner. Again, you can donate at givebutter.com/UtahRemoteCon2. So I'm going to add in our moderator, Erika, and then there are the rest of our panelists.
Hi. So we do have two other panelists who are a little bit late, so hoping they'll show up here soon. But I am Erika. I am a first-time GM with my podcast, The Let Us In, which Jayson is also in. You'll recognize him as the Mighty Q. And so we have our second season premiering on June 4th. We've also got Toby here. So Toby, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Toby. I am the GM and producer of the Side Quest In podcast. You can find us on Spotify or iTunes or anywhere that you listen to anything, really.
Anywhere for anything. Jayson?
Oh, yeah, and I am Jayson. I'm also on the lesson. I play the Mighty Q, and I'm super excited for next season. I also stream, and I am the Fightin' Ginger for anybody that is into twitching. Into twitching. I stream every Wednesday night around 8 o'clock usually. So yeah.
I love that. Awesome. Well, so I brought you guys together, and the two others that should be joining hopefully soon. I brought you guys together because you guys are some of the best role players in RPGs that I have ever had the pleasure to work with. And I was thinking of what to do for a RPG panel. And last year we kind of did like a intro to RPG, how to get into a TTRPG and stuff like that. And I figured the next logical step is how to play a character. It's hard, especially as like a new player. Well, I guess technically I'm not new. It's been like 2 years. But I had some questions to ask you guys about role playing. So I know that people have kind of like their own way of getting into a character. So I was curious, Jayson, for characters that you play, is there like a certain process that you can go through to kind of get into character?
Well, for me, it's always important to have like a connection with my character. I usually make my characters based off of characters I've already really enjoyed. That's for me specifically. Like, I love good stories. I love good character arcs, and I like taking little attributes of different characters from different things I've enjoyed over the years and kind of combining them. And I have a really interesting technique for getting into character that actually was introduced to me by one of my favorite DMs. I still play with them. His name is Todd. And before each session, he actually tells everybody to close their eyes, and he plays some like music and does a recap of the last time we played, and kind of tells like the emotions of what happened last time. And then like he kind of summarized everything and how kind of what your character experience and how they should be feeling. And you just kind of sit there and breathe and just kind of like, okay, I'm going to be feeling these emotions, and I'm going to be becoming this character. And it kind of just gives you time to get into that headspace. And then he's like, okay, now open your eyes. And then you're supposed to just be that character now, you know? And I know, like, it was the first time I've ever done anything like that, but really it helps set the mood for becoming that character for the session.
Well, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Toby, how about you? I've played with you a few times on like with Level 1 Geek, and your most recent character you played, Otis, was top notch. Fantastic. It was a dog.
It was a dog. Thank you. I agree with Jayson. For me, I put myself into a lot of the characters that I role play. I always find where's the connection between me and this character. And then I don't know that I necessarily get myself into that headspace for that character. I let the character become me and kind of just let them take over. Kind of like writing a story. Like if you've ever done writing and like you have a character and you're writing and then suddenly the story's taking its own direction because the character is really doing their thing. I think for role playing, it's similar. I just kind of let it happen. And I think it's maybe what Jayson said of getting into that headspace and then letting that headspace just kind of run with it and becoming the reality. I rarely break character when I'm role playing. I just stay in that spot through the majority of the game.
I love that. When I first started role playing Emily from Level 1 Geek, I was like, I got to figure out how to get into this headspace of this character. I don't know what to do. And she's like, well, what I do is I find a song that relates to my character in some way. And so when I'm getting into character, doing makeup, doing something, I turn on that music and I'm like, oh, okay, that kind of reminds me of this is the sassiness of this character. This is the dark side of this character, something like that. So I love hearing these like alternative ways to get into character. So when it comes to specifically anxiety, when you guys first started doing TTRPGs, what was the most anxious thing going in? Was it actually playing your character? Was it like creating the character?
That's a good question.
Yeah. So for me, when I actually just first started playing like about 4 years ago, and for me, what gave me most anxiety was actually role playing, because like I'd never done it before, and I was around these people. I was like, people are doing voices and stuff, and I was like afraid to actually do that. You know, it gave me anxiety to kind of like jump into that character and be that. You know. So personally, for me, it was just the role playing that was the biggest, like, scary thing, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's true for me too, the role playing. I don't know that I don't get anxious or anxiety even today before I do a show or I'm playing a character. Like, that's part of the joy, kind of like live theater. Like, before going on stage, that, like, the like butterflies in the stomach or like the unsurety of what's going to happen. And I think that's continued on from even the beginning of just, am I going to mess up? What does that even mean? What does messing up mean? And just the unknown. I think the unknown from the beginning till now still gives me anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of leads on to like, am I going to make mistakes thing is another question. So for when you create a character, usually within like the first session or the first hour or so, your character is constantly evolving or even changing. Sometimes I go from using it one certain accent, I'm like, that just doesn't fit the character, and then I can change it and move on. So I'm wondering, I know at the beginning I was terrified to make even the slightest change to a character. So I was like, I wrote it down. This is what it's supposed to be. Like, changing things, scary. So what is something that one of your characters has done that has been the biggest change from when you initially created the character to kind of like essentially the final to what they ended up being?
I played a game in a Star Wars Saga Edition campaign, and I had made a Jedi that was like all good, well, as good as a Jedi can actually be. That's a whole other discussion. But through the story and kind of before letting the character kind of take over, she actually became a Sith in the end, and I didn't expect it as the story progressed. There was a pivotal moment where she had to make a choice to save someone, and she embraced the dark side to do it, and it was such a powerful moment for me, for the table, and then the rest just kind of went that direction. So that shocked me. Like I was shocked, even though I was playing this character. I was like, what are you doing? Like, don't do this.
Actually, like, very similar. I had one of my favorite characters. His name was Yoshi, and he was a samurai. And I was playing him, having him be like this happy-go-lucky like guy that just wants to fight the strongest people and just kind of have a really good side. You know, he gets along with everyone. And then he had a kind of a turning point where his master like sacrificed himself to save Yoshi's life. And that really had a big effect on Yoshi, where he just kind of became, for a little while, this merciless person. And that actually is when honestly, I can say that's when I kind of fell in love with role playing. That's because I let the situations change my character. Instead of committing to just playing this role specifically, I allowed the party and the NPCs to change me through the interactions I made with them.
I love that.
And that's when I fell in love with role playing in D&D.
And Todd brings up an excellent
my buddy
point.
Todd.
Yeah,
if you're wondering
great.
who the DM is, this is the DM that does everybody close your eyes. He's way cool.
I love that. It's scary to put yourself out there in front of a group of other people. I always feel like I'm showing a vulnerable side of me when I open up to role play. Mm-hmm. And that kind of answered one of the questions that I was going to asking what about role play makes you feel the most vulnerable or gives you the most anxiety. For me, it's always been the accent. That's what gives me a lot of anxiety, is how does this character sound? And so what's been the thing that kind of like has like, I not like also anxious in a bad way, but also like anxious in a good way, kind of like making you excited or nervous about a new character?
I want to go to what Todd said, and then I'll kind of answer this, because I love that comment of showing the vulnerability side. I think that a role-playing game is similar to work colleagues, sort of. Like, you have to build that vulnerability-based trust with each other, to trust that he did say that, trust. Have that trust. And it's with vulnerability-based trust, it's that it's okay if you make a mistake. Like, and if you make a mistake, they're going to help pick you up, and being okay to open that side of you, and sometimes leave a session feeling raw, like, because you've opened yourself up to that. Mm-hmm. And I know this isn't answering your question, but Todd, I just love that so much. And I think that role playing, whether it's accents or not, is so much about vulnerability and just allowing yourself to open up. That's so great. Thank you for commenting that.
Todd's great.
Todd is actually, I throw this in, Todd is also one of my best friends. He's a really, really cool guy. And he's honestly one of the people that's helped me fall in love with D&D. And yeah, I agree with all the above. Like, for me, one thing that is very vulnerable for me in D&D is, sometimes in these characters, I add kind of my own little vulnerabilities. It's scary for me to open that up and like actually feel these emotions in the role playing. And actually did that in Todd's campaign. We had a part where my character had an arc, and I cried during this arc. While we were role playing, I cried because my character, he fell in love with this mermaid at the beginning. And he kind of worked his story, the way he kind of worked. He's kind of a bad guy at the beginning, but this mermaid kind of gave him redemption from all his bad deeds and made him feel like he could be redeemed from that. And he joined this party, and it changed him. It made him a better person. And it worked up. This is my cat character too. His name is Captain. And it worked up, and we got to my character art. We went back to Pirate Island. And I was very afraid to feel these emotions because I was at a point in my life when we acted this out where I had lots of like I have been gone through so many dating stuff, like, and I've been in like relationships before where like I felt like I love someone, you know, and that relationship just didn't work, and it felt like I lost it, you know, and that we got to that point in the campaign where I found my mermaid, and everything was good again, and then she tells me she's gonna die in 2 days. So bring up all these like past emotions, and I cried, and I actually allowed myself to feel vulnerable and feel these emotions again that I felt. And I kind of added that to my captain, and I role played him how I would feel in that situation, and kind of was able to add some emotions from my past life that I felt, and it made it it made it so vulnerable. But the storytelling, it was one of my favorite moments ever in a TTRPG campaign, just because the story was just incredible. You know? Yeah.
That's so beautiful. And Toby, I actually kind of want to ask you the same question, but also a little bit differently, because you're a pretty seasoned GM. So how do you help your players in a session? If you like, you can obviously tell when a player is having some anxiety about something. How do you kind of help them to overcome it? Like, what are some things that even me, a new DM, can do to help the players?
That's a really good question. I play with the same group I played with for years, so I think I keep going back to these like work examples, but creating an environment of empowerment and vulnerability. We've talked a lot about vulnerability, and giving the room for them to fail, and being there to pick up the slack and help them along the way. You mentioned a second ago about having that fear, anxiety of having an accent. And I think with a group and someone who's struggling, making sure and helping them understand that to role play a character, having an accent and role playing a character aren't the same thing. They're separate. So you can role play a character and create good story without ever having an accent. You could do it as yourself and still take embodiments of the character that you're playing, and you can still have a distinct difference between your out of character speech and your in character speech. So it's important to, I think a lot of times when someone hears role play, they think they have to have an accent, and you absolutely do not. Like that is so different.
I love that. That's so great. Marley brings up another really good point. Is saying something wrong or inaccurate to the character. I know I've experienced that myself, or afterwards I'm like, oh, I don't know. That seems like something more an Erika would do and not this specific character. So have you guys ever had that come up, and have you like, I wouldn't say course corrected, but kind of along that same path?
Mm-hmm.
Is the question asking saying something wrong as your character, or saying something wrong to another character?
I think it's saying something wrong as your character. Oh, give me just 1 second. Welcome, Diane.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Extremely late. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. You are totally fine. You are totally fine. So right now what we're doing is Toby was answering this wonderful kind of comment about role-playing. The things that worries Marley the most about role-playing is say something wrong or inaccurate to my character. So in an instance where you're saying something, but it's actually not really your character really kind of doing that, instead of saying something wrong to another character. I think is kind of what she was going for.
So something that's not faithful to the character. In that sense.
Faithful. Perfect. Yes.
Okay. I mean, are you asking me to answer that, or is...
Yeah. So Toby had something real quick, and then we'll go on over to you.
Yeah. Sorry, I just don't want to cut into anyone's.
You're
time.
good. You're
Hello.
good.
That's a really good question, and I think it enters a realm of trying for perfection when role playing, and role playing is a lot of improv, and in improv it's about yes and. So trusting that what you said, it's never wrong. You never say something wrong. You just go forward with it. You yes and to the next situation. And if you can get into that mindset and remove the fear of doing something wrong, then everything you do is going to be right, and you'll just be able to role play freely and push forward. If you say something you're like, oh my gosh, why did I say that? Just go with it. This is now the reality for your character, and move forward.
Yeah, that's good.
It's a good answer. I'm gonna add to that. I'm gonna yes and what you said.
Perfect.
And point out that consider that even us in real life, how many times have you found yourself in a situation where you've said something and 5 seconds later you've thought, oh wait, did those words just come out of my mouth? That's not what I was thinking. That's not what I wanted to say. There's nothing wrong with even in character saying, wait, now hang on, that came out wrong. Let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
That's
good.
It's one of those things. Whenever I'm running a game, I always add one note for players and for myself, and I always keep that up as a reminder that there is no pressure to be perfect, because you can't be perfect. None of us in life always have a perfect way of saying what we're thinking.
Yeah.
So if you say something and you realize it came out wrong or it doesn't quite fit or something, there's always the choice of just saying, hey, I messed that up. Let me rephrase it. If you're in character, and if you go out of character, then there's things like just telling the group, hey, hang on, can we just get a do-over on that?
Yeah.
It's a tool that actually one of my friends introduced me to, because in terms of safety tools, I think most of us by this point are familiar with like XNO, red light, green light, yellow light, that sort of thing. But there's also a simple option of rewind. If something went badly and you want to say, hey, let's just do that one again, but get it right this time, just rewind and do it again.
I think that's fantastic, because that also kind of comes up with Marley's thing. Like, I worry about coming up with something clever and unique to say or do. And I think that that's okay too. If you're playing something and you have to sit there for a second and be like, I need to really think about what I want to say, because my character is a rogue and they're just, these snarky little character wants to say something snarky. I think it's also okay to take a second to be like, okay, yeah, that's how I'm going to say it. And then you get right into it. It's okay to take a pause. Nothing has to be like super quick after each other. So I think that's really great. I love that function of rewind, because even as a new GM, I think that's a fantastic tool, and I'm going to take that into season 2. I think that's fantastic.
I want to add to that. I think Dan had a good point of the rewind and the perfection. It's okay with your question. It's okay to also stop and just ask the group and say, here's the message I want to get across. Does anyone have any ideas of like what I can say to get that across? Because that's going to help you with that skill set in the future. And then you're going to get ideas from everyone else. And then suddenly now you're collaborating the story together, and they're going to go, this is the perfect thing to say. And then you're going to say it, and they're going to like continue on. So use your group and trust that they're going to help.
I like that. I like that a lot, because I know I struggled with that at first. It was hard for me to ask for help, and which Todd is being a fantastic little chatter over here with another really great question of examples of what a DM should avoid when helping the players feel safe to open up.
Pressure. Avoid pressure. When you talk about opening up and vulnerability, I know this should be called vulnerability in tabletop role playing, but there's a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Again, I keep going to workplace, but when you're trying to build vulnerability in a group and a space that people can have that trust, you have to be, as the GM, it's your responsibility to open that up first. You have to be vulnerable to make that space and set the tone for what that looks like. And if you go out with pressure and expect them to do good, or expect them to even use rewind or any of these things we've given, it's going to create tension and possibly more anxiety and fear of stepping forward. And you may lose that player altogether because they're gonna close up real tight.
That's a really great point. Yeah. Anybody?
Jayson, do you want to?
I was also gonna mention too, going a little back to what Marley said about worrying about being like a significant player or just saying or doing something significant, I wanted to piggyback off what you said, both Toby and Diane, about the collaboration. Honestly, the best D&D groups are the ones that come together, are the people that speak and the ones that have a common goal. And like that's one thing I feel like people worry about a lot is, oh, I have to do something, or I have to do something, like my character has to shine or something like that. And the best times, like honestly, the times where I felt I've shined the most have been when I've included my teammates the most and we've done something amazing together. And honestly, almost every group I've played with, so many like groups have been willing to do that. So if you go into like a D&D, it's your first time, just be willing to just speak and role play with the other people. I know the DM's there, but role play with the people next to you. And if you can do that and speak to them and get on the same page, it suddenly feels less like, oh, I'm alone here. I need to do something amazing. Oh, I can do something with my teammates here, and we can come together and have a common goal. You know?
I'm going to interrupt you for just a second. We've got our other player. I'm just going to call everyone players because that's what we are. So this is Mitch. Go ahead and quickly introduce yourself. Actually, I'll have you, Diane, I'll have you do that. Or Diane. These are not my actual glasses, so everything's blurry in front of me. So the E looks like an A. So Mitch, I'll have you quickly introduce yourself, and then Diane, you as well.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. I am Mitchell, also known as Penny for a Tale on all social medias. I am the chief creative director over at Penny for a Tale Network. We handle Weave the Tale as well as Penny for a Tale. We also do marketing. I'm marketing director for Helm Gas as well as Black Void Games. I have a TTRPG on Kickstarter right now, so make sure to check that out. And other than that, I am I guess I have a lot of anxiety concerning role playing and just being a human that I've had to deal with.
Welcome to the group. And Diane.
Hi. I'm Diane. She, her pronouns. I'm see, this is where struggling for words comes in. I can be found basically everywhere as Balrog1911, and I do some streaming. I appear in a fair few tabletop streams. Just last night, I was streaming with Mitch. We were playing Alien RPG, which was fantastic, and we somehow managed to not die one more time. That's not going to last until next round.
I died last time, so
So technically Mitch has already died once, but we'll see if we can add to that counter next time.
I love that.
But I write and play a lot of things off stream, so I've got many years of just building homebrew worlds and slowly building that comfort of, okay, I'll let you into my little corner.
You may come in. I love that. And Toby, Jace, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to ask these two one of the questions that we asked at the beginning. So we were talking about obviously overcoming anxiety and role playing. And I am curious for both of you as to what your personal way is to get into character for a character you've been playing for a long time or a brand new character. Is there anything specific that you like to do to get really into that mindset?
My favorite thing that I learned from I took an improv class, and there was one moment that was so anxiety inducing that I now carry it in whatever TTRPG I go into, is just laughing at yourself very loudly. And in that way you kind of like, it only goes up from there, right? Like anyone looking at you is like, what the heck is wrong with that person? And you just say lots of things. But for me, it helps shake off the silliness of it, or at least accept the silliness that I will be a part of. And I definitely think like TTRPGs, no matter how you look at it from an outside perspective, it's very silly. We're playing Magic Pretend Times, even if you're playing like a game like Cult, or like vampires or something like that, you're like, they're still like pretending to be emos or something like that, or and so I guess just kind of like acknowledging it with a vocal way, I think helps out a lot. So I always try to do that before I do something like this. That's just laugh at yourself maniacally.
I do that on a regular basis. That's probably why I'm
figured it out. Dan, how about you?
Gosh, I mean, slightly harder question for me to answer because I'm basically stuck in that constant GM situation where for every 5 games I play, 4 of them I'm actually running. So for me, there's definitely that aspect of I have a lot of characters to get into.
Mm-hmm.
But even if it is one specific one, the process for me basically remains the same. So even if it's one single character that I need to be for a session, or whether it's preparing for very few significant NPCs, the idea is always I just think about what is required of that character, and not thinking in terms of just pure mechanical sense, but what do I need this character to be in the narrative? What do the players need this character to be? Because sure, whatever an NPC and speaking in this case for the NPCs, whatever NPC I may have designed, they have a role to play in the narrative, but the party will always be in certain whatever situation they may be in. Maybe they'll need a character who gives them a bit of a positive boost. Maybe they'll need someone to give them a kick in the rear and get going. Maybe they'll need someone who's just there to dispense some lore and information. And it's basically about, in terms of GMing, for me, it's about what makes the most sense for this character to be. And I improvise a lot. So there are times when I've had a whole design for a character, and because of some weird rash decision that my players have made, I've just tossed that whole thing out, kept the basic bullet point of who the character is, but just completely made up everything else on the fly, because that's what I had before. That's not what was appropriate to the setting at that moment. And then, I'll save those notes for maybe a future NPC.
Yeah.
When it comes to a character I play, it's different because it's, I really have to sink myself in. So the first 10 minutes are always like having jumped into a cold pool and getting that feeling back into my feet and making sure I don't cramp up. Once the first 10 minutes are done, I'm comfortable. For the most part, there'll still be moments where if I say something and I think, oh, this is going to cause conflict, those are the moments where I really have to struggle to stay in character, because those are the moments where I want to immediately pop out of character and do all sorts of conflict resolution. But in character, of course, I'm just like, no, so I guess I don't know if that really answers it, but
it does, yeah.
Yeah, so from a GM side, getting into character basically means thinking about narratively, structurally, and also just in terms of personally, what is best to have right here, right now. And in terms of playing a character, it's just find the aspects of the character that anchor me, and then hold on to those real tight. And every time my anxiety says, oh, maybe you should be doing something differently to appease people, then just hold on to those anchors real tight and let them keep you steady.
I think that's beautiful. Thank you. So moving on to some of our other questions. Jayson, you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier of like when you're creating a character, you like to have a personal resemblance to you. So I'm curious for you guys, is that something that's important to you for your character creation, and becoming that character is something that in their personality resembles you? Or do you like to just kind of go totally off and play something that is not even close in relation to you? You can just spit fire.
I mentioned it earlier. A lot of
you did too.
my characters, I put pieces of myself into, or aspects of myself that may not be widely present, like that I don't let out in my normal life. I feel safer letting it out in a role-playing setting. So yeah, I put pieces of me in characters that I'm going to play.
Good. I think that's cool. Go for it.
I'm going to say, kind of much like the anchor point that I just mentioned, I tend to put pieces of myself to help have an understanding. And I say this partly because for me, it's often difficult to relate to people. So I'm one of those people where, in order to relate to you, I will tell personal stories. I am that kind of person, because otherwise it's impossible for me to understand it. It's like, you give me an example and I'll give you a counter example, and if they match up, then we're in sync.
I love that.
Yeah. And I have to do the same for my characters. I need my characters to have at least one facet that I can fully recognize and understand. And from that, I can use that facet as just my lens into the rest of their world.
Yeah. I like that. A lens. It's awesome.
So, go along with that, like I like to put myself into characters. A lot of times I have like favorite characters from favorite shows, and I'll take aspects of them and I'll play them or modify them to be a way that I didn't picture them, you know? So like I love anime, and there are lots of different animes that I enjoy watching, and one of them is My Hero Academia. So for TLI, I wanted my character to have the charisma of All Might, of like the ha ha ha, but I wanted him to suck at everything. And like I find myself finding these aspects of characters from shows like I really enjoy, who have good character development, and then changing them in a way that I would play them, and then adding my own, like myself, my own little quirkiness to it. You know, I still need to play a serious character. I still need to take that plunge. I feel like at some point play a little bit more serious character, but that's kind of how I've been doing it a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. But everybody needs their comedic relief. Mitch, how about you?
I mean, for like, I think role play what you know. I think is always a good solid way, and in that regard, like there's always a big piece of me in every character I play or I'm on screen for. Even if the character is dramatically different from me, there's always like that little bit, a little bit of Mitchell.
A little something.
Yeah, it's like a sprinkle of salt or pepper that you enjoy. And so yeah, it's and then I take like stories from my past and things I've thought up of, and so like I oftentimes find the more of myself I can put into a character, the more lifelike and dramatic it becomes, and it's easier to feel the emotions of the character if I can tie these kind of backstories or current things with something I've experienced in the past.
I love that. And Todd also had a really good comment. I think that a good character also becomes a piece of me, as cheesy as that sounds. And so far, everybody's agreed with you, so it's not that cheesy. In the chats, everyone's agreed. I think that's true. Coming out of... Oh,
can I just
go for it.
I actually really want to latch onto that comment, because it is so pertinent that, here we are talking about putting aspects of ourselves into characters, but yeah, characters becoming a part of who you are is absolutely true. And especially since we are talking about anxiety and such, I know multiple people. I have friends, including very close friends, and I mean, not to mince words, my fiance as well, who struggle a lot when it comes to anxiety and tabletop, and maybe not directly using it as therapy, but taking aspects of yourself, putting them into a character, and maybe even aspects of yourself that you are nervous about, that you have anxiety about, that you are struggling to verbalize or confront or somehow put out there, and then finding a way to put that and play with it, for lack of a better term, in an environment where you have control and where you can find ways to mold it and gain control over it, and then taking that back in is absolutely valid. And I'm taking this and turning it into an anxiety thing, but that also applies with other things. There might be things where you play with a character and you realize, oh, hey, maybe this character's enjoyment of particular thing isn't just the character. I like it too.
I love that.
I mean, it's true. I have a friend who, this is going to sound so cheesy, but I swear it is 100%. I have a friend who, through playing lesbian characters in tabletop games, figured out she's a lesbian. Maybe I'm not playing pretend here.
It's like the game just became real.
So, yeah, it absolutely is. And I just saw the comment pop up as well. Some therapists actually recommend tabletop role-playing to face real-life challenges in a safe environment. Exactly that. Slightly better phrase than what I did, but there you go.
Yeah. Toby, you unmuted for a second. Did you have something?
No, I was just going to agree. That's all. And that I love it.
Yeah, seriously. And it's making me go back and think about my other characters and like, what in my other characters have I accidentally put in, stuff like that. So now I'm thinking about all my other characters getting a little distracted. But that actually kind of comes into another point that I was thinking about, because anxiety is such a big part of a person. I obviously have anxiety, which is why I kind of wanted to bring this whole panel together. And it's been really interesting to watch how TTRPGs have helped me grow as a person and sometimes overcome my anxiety, because I'm slowly getting better at it, but sometimes I have a hard time being a character that talks a lot because I get really nervous. And when I start talking, sometimes my voice shakes, and and it just falls apart. And so I recently played a character that was that when she did speak, it was extremely sassy and borderline jokes that were just hilarious. And so I'm curious for you guys how TTRPGs in any manner have kind of helped you overcome your anxiety, whether it is because of a character that you've played, or I don't know, that has helped you in some way kind of grow as a person. Go for it.
That's a good question. These questions have a lot of thought to them, so it's hard to just spitfire off.
It is.
I think that through role-playing has improved my ability to speak to other people in a real-world setting, because I feel more comfortable improvising, or even just in interviews, like being prepared with questions that may be asked that I'm not ready for. I think that playing a tabletop RPG and role-playing helps you overcome that, at least for me. It made me better at social interactions in general.
I love that. Anyone else?
So, for me, anxiety wise, I kind of grew up playing sports in a very jockey world, and where like TTRPGs and D&D is not normally accepted or a common discussion, and actually just starting to become involved with the TTRPG or D&D actually helped me be comfortable with that. It was kind of it became a safe space, and this is the group. Todd has been making tons of comments, and he's one of the people that helped me start playing D&D. I started playing with his group, and I just felt like I could come into this space and unleash my nerdy side, and just play these roles and not have to worry about it. And I've had I have so some. I don't show it a lot, but I have social anxiety. I have like a hard time. I'll go up to people and have a hard time with conversation. But I feel like when I'm role playing in a safe space like D&D area, I feel like I can just unleash, and like I still deal with social anxiety, but I do feel like it's helped me be the nerd I am inside. I feel way more comfortable telling people, you know what, I Twitch stream. Like I'm the fighting ginger. Like I love Twitch streaming. I love playing all these nerdy games. I love like Pokemon and watching anime, and like it's like being involved in D&D has honestly helped me enjoy much more of being myself and who I am as a nerd.
Aw. Well, and you got a little thing from your girlfriend.
She's my girlfriend. She's pretty mean.
Yes. So we'll go with Dan and then Mitch.
Okay. God, I mean, it's a different perspective. I'm gonna be upfront here to say that there's a different perspective on this for me, somewhat, because in high school I was always the nerd. Right? I was the weird nerd that basically, like, there were 2 people in my high school who actually knew what D&D was, and I was one of them. And that was only after the other one introduced me to it. But I was always kind of the weird one. That was kind of a thing, partly because of my anxiety and partly because my interests may not necessarily have overlapped with everyone, and partly because I was a bit of an elitist dick back then, but don't tell anyone. We all have our phases where we look back in our lives and go, oh, was that me?
Yep.
But partly also because, I mean, for me, there was the whole struggle of figuring out who the heck I am, and it's not like, as liberal as the school was, it's not like I could just suddenly go out and say, by the way, I think I may be trans. Partly because I didn't even know the words at the time, right? Like when you grow up in an environment where that's just not even talked about, how the heck are you going to talk about it?
Yeah.
And for me, going into tabletop at first was difficult because it was very much kind of an old school. I apologize for poor choice of words here. Going back to the other topic of not being able to perfectly express ourselves all the time. That sort of old school nerd environment where it was like you played 3.5 edition and you loved it or you got the heck out of there. And very much a sort of dude-centric thing. So this was in Australia when I was going to university. And it was just not really a nice environment. I had some fun times, but it was not a nice environment to be in because it was really just, I wasn't quite comfortable. And then it was only later, so in the last 5 years, where I've really started branching out into the online tabletop spaces, that I actually started seeing such a diverse range of people. And that, to me, was what really crashed the barriers of anxiety. Because before that, I still had all these struggles, and there were there was one campaign where I only showed up, once a month, because all the other times for all those weekly sessions, I just had too much anxiety to even show up.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't enjoyable for me, and it was a huge drain for the GM as well. And I had issues, but then once I got to a point where I started seeing a much more diverse community and where people would actually welcome me in and say, hey, yeah, we're not going to question who you are. Let's just play and roll some dice and tell some stories together. And
that's what it's about.
And that, to me, was not just necessarily the role-playing. The role-playing definitely helped because it allowed me to immerse myself in, and partly, again, this comes back to playing out things in a controlled, safe environment where I could immerse myself and start taking on different roles and different faces and maybe playing around with that a little bit as well without any risk.
Mm-hmm.
And doing that while also being in the larger safe environment of friends who have accepted me for who I am.
Yeah.
Just ended up putting me in a place where I felt comfortable both with myself and playing as other people, and it all kind of snowballed together. That acceptance of self and being accepted by others. It was a very positive feedback loop.
That's awesome. Welcome, Steph. That must mean we're almost coming to an end. So
Yes. Sorry, I don't want the discussion to end because it's been so great. You guys, all of you have been so vulnerable and open, and I've really appreciated about this con in general that people are willing to be themselves and be open about their feelings. So
yeah,
sorry that I do have to interrupt and end it. I did want to announce the winner of our raffle. So the prize is an Arium get book set so that you can start role playing as well. And the winner for that is Nicole Bat.
congratulations.
Yes, I'm super stoked about that. You can still donate at givebutter.com. There's 2 more sets of Arium books too, so you can still win them. So, and again, I just wanted to thank all of you that participated in this panel. You were all fantastic. So,
yes, thank you so much. I'm so sorry we had to cut you short, Mitch, but if you have like a quick sentence
go
on
for
your
it.
thought, that would be great.
Sorry.
yeah, sorry. So my quick sentence is that TTRPGs provide you a nice, safe environment that is hard to replicate in any other place, and you'll be able to explore avenues about yourself and your relationships with other people in this safe environment that will help you throughout life and everything. Anxiety is going to be a part of that because you're going to be vulnerable, and there's nothing around that. But I think that anxiety is really just fear of whether or not someone's going to accept you for who you are. And I have to say, if you are with friends, they will accept you for who you are. So definitely explore that, enjoy it, love it, and primarily accept yourself as you explore who you are through TTRPGs, even if it's roads that you've never traveled down before. Accept yourself, love yourself.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Mitch, Diane, Jayson, and Toby. You've all had some amazing thoughts. You've helped me improve as a player and as a GM. So I look forward to speaking to you all again with any questions or any other things to have you guys maybe on a panel again next year. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you all.